From CRI Simple Numbers, this is Profitability Playbook, the Simple Numbers Podcast, a podcast for those championing market growth and anchoring the nation's economy, small businesses, and entrepreneurs.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Simple Numbers Profitability Playbook Podcast. I'm Mike Maxson. That's Brandon Gray. And bright and early on a Monday morning. How you doing, Mr. Gray?
My life is great. So I had a good Father's Day yesterday. Spent some time on Friday with entrepreneurs from around the world. So was honored to be able to speak to the Entrepreneurs Organization's Entrepreneurial Masters Program. So it's a 3-year program where you graduate from the course with your masters for entrepreneurs. And so it was pretty cool to get to experience that and play a small role and hopefully educating them a little bit about simple numbers and to interact with entrepreneurs from across the country and across the world. I think close to half the class was global.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that was pretty cool. And just a super high energy group. They asked great questions, really kind of bought into the simple numbers concepts and information. And so it was really good. It was fun. It was a blast. How about for you? What you been up to?
Yeah. Hey, yesterday, it was raining. I took the kids to see that How to Train Your Dragon live action movie, that they made. Highly recommend it. They're like, it was a good movie, man. Like some of these kids movies lately, they've been making really good. That one was a good one. I dug that one. It was, it's amazing how realistic they make these people riding around on dragons are. I'm like, I could have believed it was real. If
you come across a dragon, now you know how to ride them.
Yeah, I'll remember that. All right. Well, today we're going to be all over the place with some labor. We haven't touched on labor a while. It's been interesting. And Brandon, let's set the stage for this. Really giving sort of the current labor picture with what we've been talking about on clients and 100 company model real quick in terms of some of the plays being run. I don't know about you, but I don't have a client base that is just gung-ho hiring away. Mm-hmm. It's a lot more strategic hiring, maybe more so than they've ever done. Where I'm finally seeing people I work with back in the mode of trying to implement better training to get more people, newer in their career, or maybe it's the entry level part of their career up and going. I know we went through a period of time there. It was like, hey, I'm willing to pay and willing to bring in whomever. But a lot of people aren't job hopping right now either. A lot of people are staying in place. So it's just an interesting time. What say you about what you're seeing?
Yeah, so I would say if there's a theme that I'm seeing in the hiring market, it's around top grading. So what we mean by that is that you are replacing talent that currently is on the team with better talent. So particularly on the sales and marketing front, seeing quite a bit of that. Folks are looking at people who are maybe marginally performing and they're like, we got to make a change. And there's a marketplace to where you can find some A players. Now you got to look for them. They're not just, on every street corner. But if you do your work, you can find some talent available. So seeing quite a bit of that. I would say just the general hiring because we are growing really slow. You've got some folks that, they've got pretty good margin dollars and growth going on, and they're needing to add to the team. But generally speaking, it's pretty slow. And I would add to that, looking at the type of business you have, you've got a lot of companies out there that I would refer to are project based. And we're going to talk about that in a little more depth here in just a second, but really difficult right now managing the labor spend because of the volatility in the marketplace.
Yes.
And the play that we could all run from 2009 till about 2022 was, I'm going to go ahead and hire this person and we're going to grow into their capacity. And I'm seeing fewer and fewer examples for where you can pull that off. Used to, you could grow into their capacity in a matter of months. Now it may take you 18 to 24 months to grow into their capacity. So it's one you've got to be really sharp on managing, without a doubt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And back to what I said, I've said it before in other episodes, and I know a lot on here. We talk about labor efficiency. We're going to get into some of that in a second, but remember those internal metrics that help you gauge when you're up against that point to hire, right? We always talked about it. If you ask a lot of employees, we all love them. Hey, are you busy? Everyone's always busy. We could always add labor, right? And if you just hold the team. But what are those metrics that sort of give you that certainty? And I'll use me and Brandon here on our consulting team. We have a sheet that we know what a consultant's capacity is before we make the next hire. And we have to hit, Brandon, it's 90%, right? I don't have it in front of me, but it's about 90% capacity that launches the job description. That's when it gets posted, because that means at that moment we have, based on our current intake and everything else we currently have there. We're not trying to do that at 80. We're not trying to do it at 75. And trust me, we would look at labor efficiency. We work for Greg, so we do that. But those are internal resources for us to know that, hey, if a consultant's at that level from an hours perspective, we got to launch it. So keep that in mind as we talk through these next ones here. Next things here, when it comes to your internal workings, what are those metrics? I'll let you know it's time to add some labor, or take it away.
Well, let's go through a few scenarios here of how you manage the labor bucket, the labor spend. So the term that we use quite often is we want to flex labor. So do you view your labor cost as a fixed cost, or is it a somewhat variable cost? And like I said a moment ago, given the volatility in the marketplace, more and more folks are starting to shift to, I'm going to make this a little bit more of a variable cost, because when the market's down, when you're slow, it really will eat you up. So they're kind of changing that. And so I'll give you a couple scenarios here that we see quite often with clients and kind of the moves that you're going to make. So, the easy one is that my past performance is declining in terms of margin dollars, and my outlook is not very positive. And you got to be realistic about the outlook. Don't rely just on your sales team and what they're putting in your pipeline, because your pipeline will misguide you. You want to look at what's in there plus my days to close. What levels of margin might we generate? Not revenue, but margin might we generate if those closes take place? What's the track record of actually closing when the sales team thinks you're going to close? Because they're usually a little more optimistic than what really takes place. So if you're seeing everything you're looking at is showing some decline, I then want to look and go, okay, I've got to reduce labor spend. So in some cases, people have already played that card. They're at minimum labor spend. You got to have a person on the floor, and you got to have a person at the door. I mean, it's just bare bones. Well, I've got to shift my strategy in that case away from labor reduction to margin improvement, because there's no one else to cut. For a lot of folks, there's still a little bit of room. And so that's where I'm kind of looking at C and D players. And we tend to hold out hope, and we know we need to make a change. Well, let's go ahead and make a change. Just go ahead and rip the Band-Aid off, make the adjustment there. A lot of times too, as you kind of look at those, you can look at the direct labor and getting it right sized based on historical LER. But don't forget about your admin management. If you got folks that aren't performing in those roles, they got plenty of capacity. Like we said, the market's tough. I want to go ahead and right size there. So that's it's not easy to do, because we're impacting other people. But you kind of look at that and which play I need to make. The one that's a little more difficult is whenever things are really strong and then they get really quiet. And then they're really strong and they get really quiet. So that volatility, especially if you're project based, that's where it's kind of like, man, I don't want to let go of any team members. I got them trained, they can perform, they can execute. If I let them go and then things pick back up, I'm caught. So that's where the flexible labor strategies kind of come into play. So the first, I'd say the most popular is you start to look at, okay, do we need to have a reduction of hours whenever things are slow? And if you got people who are on salary, then we got to look at converting them over to hourly and, reducing it in that way. And here's what surprises me. If you will just ask your team, hey, things are a little bit slower than normal. Anybody interested in having Friday off this month? Now, I'm not going to pay you, but you can have a Friday off or a Monday. Just pick which one. You can get a long weekend. It amazes me at the number of people who raise their hand and volunteer and are excited about that. So I start with just kind of asking the team around, and most of the time that'll take care of it. You'll find out, hey, I've got a large number of the team they're very happy with 32 hours. Now, that being said, once you make that move, then you kind of go, okay, well, did I get enough? Was that enough of a reduction, or do we got to move it a little bit further? So I always tell this story. This happened coming out of COVID. I had a client, and we were looking at what I just mentioned. What's the trend and what's the outlook? Neither look good, and was going to have to make some labor adjustments. And so they decided they were going to have shared sacrifice. Everybody on the team was going to reduce hours. Now, weren't necessarily for the salary team. They weren't going to, they were actually going to work more with covering some gaps from the direct team, but they're going to try to reduce the hours of the direct team. And what they found out is that there were actually some underperformers, and everybody decided that they wanted to get rid of underperformers, so they had shared sacrifice. So, it sounds great on paper, but whenever it gets time to implement, sometimes we kind of decide, well, we thought we would have shared sacrifice, but really and truly we identified it the people who weren't strong performers. So flexing, in that case, whenever things are a little bit slower, is one option.
What about Brandon? Is there any value? And I've had people ask me this, and we've talked about it with several clients. Backlog.
Mm-hmm.
Some organizations have it, and it's totally fine. Some organizations, it makes them look really good, meaning like, oh, there's an exclusive. Hey, we got a lot of people here want to buy, and customers are like, yeah, I'm willing to wait for your stuff. And then 3, there's the kind of it just kills them. Like, they have a backlog and they got to push orders out or requests out or service requests out. Total problem. What do you think of in some cases, maybe running less on labor if you have to, but backlogging your products or services?
I'm not a big fan of creating a backlog. And here's why. People will work, they will allow the time to fit, they allow the task completion to fit the time allotted. And so I don't want to slow down the team per se, because we got backlog per se. So we're gonna take it easy. We're gonna pad ourselves. Secondly, I don't like what it does to your sales team. It's kind of like when as an entrepreneur we look at core capital, and if you've got above target, which is 2 months core capital set aside, you tend to make decisions slower. And sometimes you make the wrong decisions because you have more cash than you need. And it's kind of the same when it comes to the sales team. When they've got a fat backlog, they don't push as hard. It's not that same sense of urgency, versus whenever they go, hey, we got to make these sales this week, so we've got work to do next week. It lights a fire under them. They perform differently. So I remove the safety blanket. I'm an advocate of working through it. And 2, backlog, it could even be contractual, but until I get going on it, they're way out of that contract most of the time.
Yeah.
So I want to go ahead and, bird in the hand kind of deal as far as that goes. So, yeah. So that was one example on the, flex. Ask, does anybody want to, you go for volunteers. That's the first one. If not, then we're going to kind of go more shared sacrifice in terms of, well, we didn't get any volunteers, but we're all going to reduce hours as far as that part goes. On the admin management side of the house, one technique we like to look at, and everybody loves this part.
I know it's coming.
So we may need to do a little bit of consolidation of roles. The first of that is what we call player coach. Give you an example. A client of ours moving along was doing great. The last 2 years has slowed down pretty substantially. You're looking at the amount of volume that's coming through, and they're like, well, we got too many direct team members, so we're going to skinny that up. but we do need somebody to kind of step in and whenever things pick up slightly. So that's where I'm going to take some of my admin management team members and turn them into player coaches, because I need those folks to build back up. They've got they're utility players. They've got a skill set that's not only as a doer but also as a leader. That's where it's kind of like, all right, guys, you were spending 40 hours a week in a quote air quotes here management role. You're going to spend about 20 hours of your week in a management role, and the other 20 you're going to be a producer. You can go back to, as my dad used to call it whenever he was in maintenance management. You get shorthanded or there was a big emergency, he'd say, well, I'm going back to my tools. I'm not managing this week. I'm turning wrenches. And so it's a very similar type of situation there.
So what are we, Brandon? What are we? I feel like, oh yeah. Okay, good.
We're more player than coach. You're supposed to carry a full client load. So yeah, so we do both. And the calendar is your friend in that. Not to say things don't come up that aren't calendared, but guess what? Monday mornings, Mike and I, we are in coach role. We're meeting with team members. We're doing the podcast, get ready to be released. We're reviewing data, checking. Monday mornings, we're doing all that kind of stuff. And then Monday afternoon, we go into player role. And so the key there, and this kind of goes into the next one to make that work, and this is the part people really don't like, is you got to have everybody on your admin management team track their time. Because if I'm going to go into player management, I've got to give up some type of things that I was doing from an administration and management standpoint. And the only way to know what I should give up is to track where I'm spending my time. And this is another one that we're batting 1,000 on. When someone does a time study of where the team is spending their time, 100% of the time, they find areas where they're not working in their highest and best use, where they're doing certain things that, for whatever reason, whether it was something that was started years ago, I'll give you an example of that. We had a client that had their accounting team do this. And they found out that on Fridays, one of their team members was spending 6 hours every Friday generating reports. And the owner of the company got with them and said, what are you spending 6 hours generating? She said, all those reports I give you every Monday morning. He felt really bad. He said, I haven't looked at those in 2 years. It was something he had started way back when, was relevant and valid for a short period of time, but then was no longer needed. But he didn't communicate back to the accounting team, I no longer need this. And they didn't question if he no longer needed it. They got 6 hours a week back because he didn't need those reports. So look at what you're spending your time on, eliminate the low value activities. And in some cases, what you can find is not necessarily just for player coach, but I can consolidate some roles and supplement the person who you consolidated the roles into with an admin assistant. So this is pretty simple math. I got 2 people that make $125K. All right, so that's what, 250,000. I'll let one of them go, so I save 125. All right, then I add back a 60,000, 75,000. We'll just do 75 for easy math. $75,000 admin. Well, that's still a net 50K a save. And I'm able to then use that admin to take on the low value task that manager was doing.
Well, and I would add this too, Brandon. Depending, a lot of this too makes a lot of sense depending on the size company you are. I don't know how many times I've run into businesses that this is my favorite. They're $2 million. I have a marketing manager, and it's like, now, if I look at the salary survey for a marketing manager, that's a lot of times that's going to be a nice bill there. You can just hire a fractional marketing company, or you can, or same with HR. You can get a full HR person. We always joke around here. It is pretty funny, everybody. Oh, Mike used to do HR when we were small with Greg. I don't know how I'm not in jail yet, everything else. I just got out of the Army, everyone, okay? It was a rough time, but we made it, right? But I did use fractional HR resources that helped. We did use other things, and instead of bringing in a full-time employee that's going to be their salary plus benefits, it was better to just use some of those resources as temporary assistance. And sometimes with a lot of them, they give you the information, they give you processes, procedures, allows you to get them implemented, and then you don't need them anymore after that.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so you get some benefit there on some of those. So some of those part-time things to me are also those fractional company resources that you can go out and get that fill that role. And I mean, you think about it, everyone, we do it on the finance side. I mean, we fill a gap for people that when they call, they want, our analysis, our modeling and stuff like that, that we can give you for a couple hours a month versus, paying someone full time. Is there full-time financial analysis for your business sub 20 million in revenue? I doubt it. So
Really like the hired gun approach. And two, even when you start to look at companies that are growing, you think, oh, I'm growing now. I need, use sales manager or chief revenue officer, or marketing manager or CFO, whatever it may be. Really, you just need that position for a short period of time. And then once everything's set up and established using that outside expert, you can just have a solid team member run with it.
Oh yeah.
So really, I think ongoing it produces a lot too. So that's we talked about flexing down. So whether that's hours reduction, team reduction, consolidating roles, player coach roles, those kind of things. And don't forget too, you as the entrepreneur may have to change some things that you're doing. You may have to be a player coach. Doesn't sound fun, but when it gets down to it, we got to turn a process. You may go back to being the top salesperson. Those types of things. Now, flexing it back up is where you also got to kind of be careful, because once again, the market's volatile. And I may look and I've got 3 months that just are on fire. What's after those next 3? And you go, I can't see that far. Well, I'm cautious. So if I flex the team down, I'm obviously bringing them back from an hours perspective. And then you go, well, that's not enough. I still need more folks. That's where I look at subs and temp labor. And I know the first thing everybody says, well, subs are more expensive. You're 100% correct. But I can promise you this, when the work slows down, you will let the subcontractor go. You'll no longer continue to use the sub. You'll no longer continue to use the temp. But if you commit to hiring, you're going to keep that person around at least a couple of extra months to wait and see if the market's going to improve. And when things are as tight as they are right now, those 2 months that you were waiting to see is the difference between hitting profit target and just surviving. So, yeah, I'm willing to pay what I call some insurance, meaning I'm paying a premium in those roles for subs and for temps for a short period of time. I'm buying a little bit of insurance to prevent, kind of a long-term issue of holding on to labor too long. And the market, like I said, we're seeing a lot of this, especially if you're project-based. Now, if you're not project-based, that's where I'm going to look during the upticks at stretching my labor efficiency. Now, we call this running the engine hot. And you can do this for a short period of time. You can run an engine hot. It will not melt it immediately. Now, if you leave it that way, it will melt it, which means you'll have a lot of issues on your team. But I'm going to push, and I'm just candid with everyone. Look, we don't need to commit to extra labor right now. The market is not stable enough, but we've got the next 2 months are going to be really busy. Here's what's ahead of us. By the way, we're going to celebrate the wins at the end of those two. If things work out, we might can do a little bit of a bonus, which, by the way, a bonus is for effort that is above and beyond what your normal salary would cover, and it's usually not sustainable. We may can do some bonus and what have you to reward in that time. And I'm going to stretch it and see how far I can kind of push that LER a little bit. And usually folks can work in those parameters if they know there's an end in sight. If they know it's for 2 or 3 months and it is what it is and we just got to suck up and make it work, okay. Where you've run into trouble is where that 2 to 3 turns into 4 to 5, 6 to 7, and now all of a sudden the engine's run hot too long. So yes, as you get more data to confirm it's here, it's going to stay for a while, then that's where I do look to add. But I do try to run the engine hot temporarily from time to time.
I like it. In a nutshell, when it comes to labor, make sure you're looking at potentially flexing labor on the admin management time, looking at adding additional resources from a fractional level, administrative assistant. Just be really diligent in examining when to add or reduce labor. Use those key metrics of labor efficiency and additional metrics within your company to help you out. If you need any assistance, you can always give us a call. So until next time, I'm Mike. That's Brandon. You have a great week.
If you want to know more about driving sustainable profitability for your business or are interested in learning more about CRI Simple Numbers, please visit our website at simplenumberscri.com. Thanks for listening to this episode of Profitability Playbook, the Simple Numbers Podcast. You can subscribe to Profitability Playbook on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you prefer to listen to podcasts. If you like what you heard today, please leave us a review. This podcast is brought to you by CRI Simple Numbers LLC, a division of CRI Capital Group LLC, and a subsidiary of CRI Advisors LLC. CRI is the trusted brand under which Carr, Riggs & Ingram LLC, the CPA firm, and CRI Advisors LLC, along with its subsidiaries, deliver professional services. Please note, Carr, Riggs & Ingram LLC is a licensed independent CPA firm offering attest services, whereas CRI Advisors LLC and its subsidiaries specialize in providing tax and business consulting services. These entities operate within an alternative practice structure as defined by the AICPA Code of Professional Conduct and comply fully with applicable laws, regulations, and professional standards. Ready to simplify your business finances and drive growth? Explore valuable resources, books, and tools designed for entrepreneurs and small businesses at simplenumberscri.com.